All right, we're here today with Mr. Anton Barbeau. Two dudes wearing sunglasses. How you doing today, man?
I'm all right, I think.
So we're going to talk about your new record, man, which is a double concept album. Man Bird. Tell me about this. How did the idea come to you?
Um, well, I was with Julia in Spain. We were on tour in 2017, I think it was, and we went to see the film Lady Bird, which is set in my hometown of Sacramento, and it's sort of the main character. She's a Catholic schoolgirl who just can't wait to get out of town, leave town, and it's filmed in many locations that are very familiar to me, and I was a Catholic schoolboy, so there's a lot of resonance. And after we left the cinema, we were just at some cafe and joking about making a film called Man Bird, just where I kind of track Ladybird's comings and goings, but not in a stalkery way, mind, just in a sort of a meandering, oh, it's my hometown, hurrah. But I think at some point just decided, yeah, stick with music, kid. And so turned it into I knew that was a good title for a song, Man Bird. And so I kind of worked on the song, and then the rest of the album just kind of went from there. Became, whereas Ladybird, she's very, very eager to get out of town immediately, as soon as she can. For me, I didn't want to leave. I was kind of, a bit of a chicken, and stayed put as long as I could. And
so, one of the songs is called Chicken.
Exactly.
But you've since lived quite a few places.
Yeah.
Quite far from.
I did in fact finally get out of Sacramento. I moved first to, well, we were talking about this earlier. I moved to England, and lived there for 5 or 6 years. 5 years for sure, and then 6 or 7 years worth of spending a lot of time there on and off. Yeah. And then from there, went to Berlin, and have been there, or was there, from 2011 up till early this year, and I've been back in California since the pandemic hit.
Did you kind of get caught out back here when you were?
Well, I think I was in Berlin, but I think the idea was, because I've got people here, and the idea was to kind of get out while I could get a flight, because there's that kind of pandemic panic that was happening, and sure enough, the scene at the airport, at Tegel Airport in Berlin, was, even by German standards, a bit chaotic, with when they're canceling flights, and suddenly everyone is, social distancing was out the window, and everyone, especially all the Americans, get out of my way, I get a flight, man, and then so we get to the next queue to try to get a next flight booked, and then there's a bomb scare. It's just and that's how I got out of Berlin. It was a bit chaotic, but
wow.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about the new record is, with the whole bird idea, like theme, there's also lots of lyrical talk about airports and stewardesses and airplanes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, yeah. Go on.
Well, yeah, that's been my life for the past years, between touring in Europe and coming back here. I'm always in an airport. I'm always on an airplane, and kind of living two lives. My life in California, my life in Europe, and never quite feeling really settled. I don't know where I live. I don't know where I am. What time is my jet lag over? Permanent jet lag and so forth. And so yeah, that really was the theme of the record, is trying to, if one of the themes is leaving home, there's also the idea of trying to return home, wherever that even is. And there are a lot of birds in the record too. Actual, we've got flammulated owls and tits and crows, and
You're
am I a bird watcher? Something like that.
I want to ask, thematically, were you tempted to cover Iron Maiden's Flight of Icarus?
No. But
thinking of a man bird, that was the first image that came to my mind.
Sure. Yeah. No, I kind of I managed to fill a double album with enough sort of bird related and airport related and material that I was I was good with that.
You didn't need the Maiden tunes.
So.
So Memory Tone is my favorite song off the record. Tell me about this one.
um, well, weirdly, that's the most officially ABBA influenced song on this album. Over the course of making this record, I got into ABBA and Fleetwood Mac big time. And these are bands that I had up to this point kind of spent my life despising for no clear reason, you know. I don't know why I didn't like ABBA. I don't know, now that I'm an ABBA freak, I do not understand how I could never have.
And it's your initials too, front and back.
Don't tell anybody this. Um, and so anyway, that song in a way was just me trying to do something in an ABBA. It's not meant to sound like them, but it's just sort of the structure of their songs, which is basically hook, 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 pre-chorus, chorus with hook, hook, layered hooks, more hooks, things going on. And so I was just trying to do that with the structure of the song, you know, where it's just sort of, it's relentlessly, hopefully catchy and also sort of, to me, oddly, with that song, it's probably the least autobiographical track on the record. I mean, it's still taking place in an airport. This person is still trying to figure out, you know, he's trying to get home, or he's come home and there's nobody waiting for him, or whatever. So the themes are still consistent with everything else on the album, but it's probably the least sort of specific to my real life. Other songs, I think, are much more so. But I'm glad you like that one. You know, I had a lot of fun putting that one together. So
yeah, it's super. I didn't hear ABBA at all. It's super catchy, but like I wouldn't have thought that unless I had, you know, read you saying that.
yeah. I mean, it's not obvious. Nobody's ever said, oh, there's so clearly the ABBA influence there. You know. But
so did you have a moment where you realized, oh dang, I like ABBA and Fleetwood Mac now, or was it sort of gradual?
Oh no, it was definitely serious moments. You know, and those are the kind of things that you know, kind of live for that. You know, those epiphanies. And I think as I've gotten older, it becomes more important and more entertaining to kind of look backwards and think, well, what else did I miss out on? You know, musically or otherwise.
And it's always awesome to discover an artist with a huge back catalog that you can get into.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not exaggerating, but I think getting into ABBA, getting into their entire catalog, was a bit like discovering a new Beatles for me, because, yeah, I mean, so anyway, so again, I think the ABBA thing started. I don't know if it was on the same tour in Spain with Julia, but we were in some little Airbnb somewhere, and she said, so you really don't like ABBA? I'm like, I do not like ABBA, you know. And she said, well, here, let's check this out. And so listened to a few songs, and I probably said, well, it's catchy. But you know, I don't remember exactly what it was that broke me finally, but at some point, you know, maybe I think she had ABBA Gold, so we were listening to the greatest hits. I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good song. That's a well-written, well-crafted, you know, you kind of get into it from that angle. And then the songs just start to stick, and then it became irresistible. And then she got me for my birthday. She got me the sort of little box set of all of their albums, and we booked a hotel in Reno, and you know, spent a couple of days in a hotel room listening to all of ABBA's albums, you know, as you do, right? And you know, became pretty much you know, fanatic at that point.
What are some of your favorite ABBA tunes?
Oh God, almost all of them, almost anything. I mean, I'm just kind of the hits. I think Super Trooper is an amazing track, and it's one where the guys they always kind of give themselves a really cool backing vocal part that nobody probably ever really notices, but they're in the background going, "This is great," you know. You know, there's a lot of sort of B-sides and things like Elaine. I think it's a great track. The Visitors, the you know, the title track.
Yeah.
That album. That's one that that's the one that I would play for anybody who says, "Oh, I don't like ABBA," "Oh, here, listen to this." Doesn't even sound or feel like them, but what a track. So
I remember in the late 90s, I think Select magazine published like a list of the top 10 mental breakdown records, which, when you're, late teens, early 20s, that sort of thing appeals. And I was like, oh, I got to hear all these. And like The Visitors was in that list. And I remember getting it and being like, yeah, this isn't how I think of ABBA. This is dark,
yeah,
but really cool musically and still very catchy.
yeah. I think a lot of their music, a fair amount of their music, is far more grown up than we may have noticed at the time or given credit for. They can certainly, they've cranked out a lot of just whimsically catchy, frivolous seeming tunes, but yeah, they've got some. This is a very divorcey band, isn't it? And so they really touch on the human condition in a way that I did not expect. So
You mentioned the Beatles. Sticking with a memory tone, is that the Paul McCartney Christmas song sound in there on the bridge? Like after the second chorus, it sounds a lot like it.
well, I can't say yes, in any conscious way, but I'm certainly a fan of that song. You mean like "Wonderful Christmas Time," right?
Yeah, the
Right.
keyboard sound, like the
No, that wasn't anything intentional on my part, but now I'm going to go have to listen to "Wonderful Christmas Time" and my track, and so I can, I'm sure, yeah, like I said, I'm a fan of Paul's Christmas tune, and I'm sure it's crept in. So I'm going to give you a yes now.
Now, what made you fall in love with music as a kid? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, back to the Beatles. My parents had 5 or 6 Beatles records, plus John Lennon's Imagine, when I was growing up, when I was first born. And I imagine that I probably heard Sergeant. I'm 53, so I was born in '67, about a month before Sergeant Pepper came out. So I'm sure I was hearing Beatles before I was even born, and I'm sure I heard Sergeant Pepper when it was first out, even though I was only, a wee baby. But yeah, the Beatles. I do remember my earliest memories crawling around through my parents' collection, trying to find the one that had "I Want to Hold Your Hand." That was my favorite song from age 0.
Nice.
Yeah. There's also there's a kind of for me, it's a really powerful, vague memory. I was with my mother in her Studebaker in, whatever year, early 1970, 71, something like that. We were driving around somewhere, and on the radio, this gorgeous little pop tune came on. And I remember thinking, what is this? What is this? And I was, just old enough to probably be able to ask, what is this? What song is this? But she didn't recognize it. And this was, a few months before Shazam was invented. And so we had, there was no really, we didn't find out what it was. I don't know. And so I kind of feel like I've perhaps spent my life as a songwriter trying to, recreate that song, find it subconsciously, no idea what it was.
That is excellent. I love that.
Huh.
You ever dream songs?
I rarely, but in fact, there is one track on the Manbird album called Dreamscape 4, I think. And I had a lot of dreams informing this album, which is unusual. I was really committed to this sort of concept album, and these dreams were saying, do this, do that. And I had one dream, it was, there was a woman who created this piece of music that was very layered, intricate, lots of vocals, and it was just gorgeous. And I was so jealous. I thought, I want to make music like that. It's but I woke up and thought, that was my song, even though in the dream it was definitely somebody else. And so I tried, as soon as I woke up, I tried replicating it, and I came nowhere near it, not even close. So the track on the album called Dreamscape 4, it's just, it's more an homage to that dream, or to the idea of this music that I could imagine, but I couldn't create myself, even though in the dream I somehow did. So I would still love to approach the music that I had in that dream, and figure, that's the funny thing, is like, being an insecure guy as I am, as soon as I woke up, I thought, oh, I couldn't do that. I can't do something like that, even though
It's your subconscious.
yeah, even though it was right there. It was a strange experience, and I still love to try to come closer to that song. It was gorgeous. It was really lovely.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find I have lots of my best ideas right on the verge of sleep. And if I don't force myself to get up and write them down or sing them into my phone or something, they're lost. But there's something about that space that it's very creative.
And do you feel, is this when you're just falling asleep or just waking up? Is it
just falling asleep? There are a few times just waking up where I'll try to remember the dream, try to keep replaying it, but then like it often changes, as you enter into the waking world again,
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, talking about bands, you get compared to Robin Hitchcock, Julian Cope, and XTC a lot. Are you fans of those guys?
Oh, I am, very much so. These
Okay.
are huge influences. It's funny because I've sort of found ways of connecting, if not directly to the artists, to those who kind of have worked with them. So that's been kind of a funny little part of my career story in the past few years. I had a band in England called 3 Minute Teas, which included Andy Metcalf and Morris Windsor, who were in the Egyptians and in Soft Boys. And I've also worked with Kimberly Rue, and we did a gig once, 3 Minute Teas, Andy and Morris and myself, with Matthew Seligman, who we lost earlier this year to COVID. He sat in with us as well. So that world, the Robin Hitchcock world, is something I've definitely dipped more than a few toes into. And Robin's a huge influence as a songwriter. Maybe not so much anymore, because I went through the period where I, upon discovering his music, and just it made perfect sense to me. It was sort of the idealized version of what I wish I could, what I was trying to do, or something like that. And so I aspired to that. But these days, like I said, it's ABBA and Fleetwood Mac. But so Robin Hitchcock's a big influence, and XTC, of course. I did end up working with Colin Moulding on a couple things, so that was wonderful. And I supported Julian Cope on a couple on dates on his 2011 and 2012 tours, and that was it was amazing. That's a dream come true.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that tour. You weren't on it though. I saw him play in Reading in 2012.
Okay, yeah, I did 2012. I did Harlow in Essex, and I did Oxford. So I did two of those dates. Yeah,
because he was doing he did the Great Dominions, which was amazing.
Yeah,
that Teardrop song. Whoa.
Yeah. It was one of the coolest things for me about doing those shows with him was watching him do sound check, because he'd sit down. He was so cool with everybody. He was just really, he treated everyone well, made everyone feel good. So whoever was working the venue, he was just really sweet with people. Anyway, so he sits down at the Mellotron. He's got his Mellotron with his Casio on top of it, and as soon as he hits the little drum machine in the Casio, he just starts to groove, and he's just sitting there doing his sound check, grooving to a drum machine, but he's glowing. It's that thing that he does is happening no matter, because he's 100% committed all the time to what he does. And I really felt that. You could see it from the room. And this is just a sound check. This is just hitting a drum machine during the sound check. And
awesome.
And that was as powerful almost as the gigs themselves, So yeah, it was cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're saying maybe not being as influenced by Robin anymore. Your last 3 albums, Magic Act, Natural Causes, and Berliner Grotesque, you refer to as your Transfiguration trilogy?
Yeah.
Were you transfigured?
Well, I mean, what's meant by that is that each of those records started off with the intention of being something else. So the first of those records, Magic Act, was meant to be the third 3 Minute Teas record, but that band broke up. So instead, it's mostly a 3-minute tease record because Andy and Morris are on many of those tracks. Plus, Colin Moulding is on bass there as well. And but like I said, that one started off as a 3-minute tease album that became a solo record, and then the next one, Natural Causes, was originally what was it called? I think Apple Wax or something like that, and it was right sort of on the edge of the Trump election in 2016. So the songs were really dark and full of guns, and locked and loaded. And so here I was making this kind of ugly record that I probably didn't even like. And after the election, there's this idea when he got elected in 2016, there's this idea that we're all going to have to be punk rock from now on. We're all going to be angry. We're going to break the system down, and somehow we're going to overcome. And I just thought, I can't do that. That's not true to me. I mean, I was full of as much disgust as anybody, but I couldn't put those songs out there and feel good. It wasn't right. So with Natural Causes, that record that became Natural Causes, I decided I wanted to try to make something really lovely. So 12-string guitars and mellotrons and synthesizers, sort of Popol Vuh meets Prefab Sprout or something like that,
Nice.
Yeah, and so just wanting to do something, put something really good into the world, put a piece of music that just had a gorgeous sound to it. And I think that record really, it works on that level. I'm really happy about that. And then the third one in the trilogy, Berliner Grotesque, it started off as a photograph, which became an album cover. And I thought, okay, and now I'm gonna, because it's my nature to kind of, I'm definitely a bite the hand kind of fellow. And I thought, well, I've just made this really lovely record, Natural Causes, that people seem to like. So I'll make a really hideous industrial record that will make people hate me again. And so I started off trying to do something nasty and quite dumb. And within a few minutes or days or hours of that, I started writing real songs again. And so it became a piano-based sort of, cabaret album or something. So it went from trying to be this really hideous thing to quite a nice little record, Berliner Grotesque. So each of those records was meant to be this, but they each became that. And yeah.
Gotcha. Now, Magazine Street was an old song that you, right? That you reworked for Natural Causes. Tell me about that. That's a great tune, man.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was. I think I saw that you interviewed Steve Kilby. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Magazine Street. Don't tell anybody this, but Magazine Street was.
Secret.
Yeah, this is my attempt at writing Under the Milky Way. So, I would, yeah, and so because we're talking about influences, and I'm saying, well, I'm not as influenced by certain artists anymore because I've kind of absorbed everything I could. But there's definitely a time in my earlier songwriting days where I'd hear something I liked and just say, okay, I'm having that, and I would try to replicate it in my own writing. And usually it's not obvious to other people, which is, I think, is a sign of successful writing. But yeah, I was a big Church fan, and so Magazine Street was inspired by Under the Milky Way.
Oh wow, I wouldn't have seen that either. So.
Yeah,
well done.
And there's a street in I don't even know what town it is, but it's when we're coming back, say after a gig in San Francisco or something, that driving back to Sacramento, you always, after you pay the toll, go through the toll bridge, there's the Magazine Street exit. And I know other songwriters from around here who have songs called Magazine Street, because you see it and you just think that's a perfect song title. And I love that. I live for those perfect song titles. That's a gift when you get that. And so
do you keep a list?
Well, sure. I mean, I've always got the notebook with
right on you.
Yeah. So yeah, because the song titles are the best way of getting something good. Because if you got a good title, you have to live up to that. You have to write a song that's as good as the title. So yeah, Magazine Street kind of came out of that, and very jangly guitar stuff at the time. So I was doing.
So on Manbird, the new record, Cowboy John was the first song you ever wrote when you were 8?
Yeah.
What was the impetus to release it now?
Well, again, the Manbird record, it's kind of a look back at my whole musical life, or my my whole life, but with a focus on certain key points musically for me. And so I think that kind of just had to be there somehow. I mean, it's a funny little track because the song Cowboy John is literally that's it. That little sequence, I'm Cowboy John and I live on a farm. That's the entire song, right? But and I would go over to my friend's house and try it on his piano, or when I was at my grandmother's house, I'd play it on her piano for hours. There's not much to it, but so on the Manbird record, it's kind of merged with my version of Greensleeves, which was the name of a stuffed animal pet toy that I had as a child that my dog one day decided to eat. And this is all in the lyrics of the song, but my parents really did. They pulled a music box out and they said, "Well, here's this anyway," because that was all that was left of this beautiful stuffed toy. And so they gave me this little ding, 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 and it's quite sad. And so just as a look backwards at my musical life, these kind of key moments that seemed like it had to go on there. So that's kind of the story of Cowboy John.
How did you feel after writing your first ever song?
I know I was excited. I mean, I was just excited about music and excited to, do my own thing with it. I was always trying to pick out little melodies anyway on any piano I could find, and so it was in me. I don't remember specifically that one because it's hardly a song. But years later, when I was 13, that's when I sort of wrote my first real song with chords and the chorus, and and that was it's really funny because even though I was sort of a Beatles baby, it was Gary Newman that zapped me into becoming a musician. That's what I want to do. And yet, ironically or not, my very first real song is called Come Back, and it's this ridiculous kind of Buddy Holly thing. Come back, don't go. You still don't know how much I love you, girl, so please come back and never leave me again. It's, a very 1950s kind of thing. So I don't know how the Gary Newman influence cranked that out, but so that was more like, I've got a real song. I've written a song. And, the funny thing about that one is it's not that bad a song. It wasn't, maybe someday for Manbird 2, I'll include Come Back or something. But yeah. So that I was proud of that because that's when I started, that's when I knew I was a songwriter, when I wrote Come Back, and I had that notebook that had Come Back, and I had other songs like Memories of London, or whatever it was called. All these tons of songs about being heartbroken, or about people girls I'd never even met because I was only 13, but just trying to imagine all this heartbreak and
Now, I can't think of any songs with the word beak in them, and yet on Manbird you've got 6.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't actually tally it up, but I don't doubt that there are 6 beaks.
Well,
there.
There's 5 there, and then The Art of Beaking is the B-side. Well,
That's right.
They all came out this year, which is still, I can't think of any other songs with beak. I mean, a beak, I guess, is a mouthpiece. Like, what does this mean for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, I do just like the word. There are a lot of words that I really like, and beak is a very satisfying word. It's like larb, which is a Thai dish, right? Larb. Just say, larb.
Larb.
And
yeah,
and it's kind of in a way the opposite of beak. Beak's very conclusive. By the time you get to that K, you're done. Beak.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not entirely true because there's a little extra at the end of the K, right? Beak. Whereas larb, there's nowhere to go. Larb. But anyway, so I just like the word, but and with this record, there's so many bird themes anyway that beak became kind of an easy go-to for playing with the bird feeling. And honestly, the Art of Beaking was a song that the only reason it was even a Manbird song was because I stuck the word beak in it, because otherwise the original version had nothing to do with the record. It was just a song that was written at around the same time. But I thought, oh, maybe it'll go on the album, so I better put some beaks or some birds or some feathers or something on there. And so kind of cheating in that case. But and that's probably why it didn't make the actual album. So,
Okay.
but and then there's Beak parts 1 and 2, and that's, you know, just a chance to, an excuse to chant the word beak. You know, who doesn't want that?
True. Oh, dainty beak. I mean, that's a nice phrase.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I have to say that was written the day after my best friend Janet died,
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
so it's, well, thanks. I mean, it's a weird one to kind of, you know, but I mean, I think that's the thing, is it's the word beak for me. It can cover a lot of ground emotionally. You know, it's a delicate word, as well as being, you know, it can be quite funny if you want it, but it's also a delicate word, you know. So.
Another of my faves was "Flying on the Ground Is All Right." Just that chant, just
Mm-hmm.
stuck in my head all day. Actually, super catchy.
No, good. Yeah, I mean, there's it's Buffalo Springfield, I think, right, who did "Flying on the Ground Is Wrong," and so this is a kind of an answer to that. And I do remember I wrote it. There's a little coffee shop on Maybachhofer near where I live in Berlin, and this is where I wrote a lot of the lyrics for the Manbird album. Just go there early in the morning and sit down, do my writing, and I was sort of walking home from there, very just, you know, wired up, and sort of kind of that chant kind of came to me in the, you know, it's only a 2 or 3 minute walk home, but so by the time I got upstairs, I was kind of cranking that one out, and it, even though it's sort of I think feels a bit like it's a whimsical tune, it still speaks to one of the themes of the record, which is kind of, you know, kind of being grounded. You know, if on this album I'm the problem is that I'm always up in the air. I'm always flying one direction or the other, and never even sure which direction, and where am I going to land and where is home. The idea of flying on the ground is all right, is meaning, you know, you get your feet stuck in the earth, and and so it's a bit weird that the pandemic has been the thing that has, you know, it's during the pandemic that the Manbird album has been released, and I've been in this place for more than 6 months now. I've been on this farm, and this is home, and this is where I've, you know, been grounded, you know. And it's a farm. There's a lot of dirt. You know, get your feet in a lot of dirt around here. So that song, it speaks to that feeling of, you know, and it's hard for me. It is hard for me to settle, even though maybe across the album I'm trying to find home. Maybe when you get there, you think, but can I go now? You know. So yeah, that album, or that song kind of, it's got more, maybe it's more of a personal meaning, but my therapist approves, you know.
So has it been all right these past 6 months being grounded?
Yeah, it has. Generally, I mean, I'm pretty safe here. I'm with Julia and her family, and we got 3 cats, and we now have a dog. And you know, it's sort of a safe space. You know, we're on a little farm here, so you got nature right out the door. And I've got a recording setup in the other room. I can do all my work. And my dad's nearby, so, you know, see him frequently and able to help him out with the house, and take him to appointments and things like that. And so, you know, I think overall it has been all right. It's been quite all right, you know.
You're quite prolific. Have you been writing a lot of new stuff?
Yeah. Yes, I am prolific, and yes, I've been writing. The first batch of material that I wrote, you know, in the pandemic age era, you know, was a sort of a bunch of tunes that were falling under the title "The Falco Years," because when I first got here, we'd listen to Falco at dinner time, and I thought, I just want to make a record that sounds and feels like that, kind of a party record, and you know, kind of a, you know, tight tight synths and drum machines. Everything's just kind of right here. You don't need to go all over the place to make this kind of record. So I started recording like that, and a lot of the songs are terrible. I'm still trying to write ABBA songs, but they just bit through a Falco filter, and one way or another, it just wasn't really happening. But more recently, I've finally kind of hit upon the title and concept of a next proper record, and so I've started writing songs for an album called Power Pop, um, paying homage to the genre that I'm very often associated with, and yet, I don't really feel, I don't quite understand. To me, the genre of power pop is very much about self-limitation. We just want things to be okay, like they were before the Beatles took drugs. It's like, but that's when they got good, man. So I'm writing a power pop record that will hopefully put the power pop industry out of business and ruin my career once and for all. But anyway, it's fun because at least it's giving me something to write about. So.
That's the thing about power pop. Like, it sounds like those two words seem like they should be the greatest thing ever, and often it's just very much the samey sort of stuff that is not. I mean, there's some great power pop stuff, but as a whole, I can't say it's really done much for me, despite me wanting it to.
Yeah. I mean, it always starts with the that's the drum fill. Every song starts with that drum fill, and it's just a bunch of middle-aged men, shaking their Beatle wigs and longing for that girl who walked away or whatever happened. This unrequited, emotionally stunted situation that I find, at worst offensive. It's like, I live for music that goes everywhere, that's brave and weird, and I don't know that I do that myself, but I mean, that's what I wish I did. I wish I could, Ein Schützen Sie neu about a nurse with wound. That's what I would, why don't, I want to reach for that. I feel like I'm not doing enough in the world if I don't challenge myself somehow. I love pop music, ABBA we're talking about, but the power pop thing, there are a million 3-minute pop songs that are just fantastic, and I live for that. I still want to do that more than anything else, make those 3-minute perfect pop songs. But when Julian Cope does Try 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 or something like that, when he does a 3-minute pop song, it's holy, it's epic, and it's it's there to kind of hit the whole world. I don't like music that just says, oh, let's keep things right here if that's okay, because and that's what I feel the power pop genre is so much about. And but so power pop is one thing, but pop music, I love pop music. Julian Cope and ABBA, they're doing the same thing in that regard. But then Julian Cope is he's gone elsewhere as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. So speaking of taking things different, the next song I was going to ask you about was Even the Swans Are Dirty, which is a departure from the other songs on the record. It's kind of intense and spacey at the same time.
That's funny because you just missed Julia. She just came in to get her glasses, and she and I were walking around Berlin. Am I allowed to tell the story? We were walking around Berlin, and she's sort of always teasing me because I'm just in love with Berlin. It's from the moment I got there, this is it, and I think she's a bit more skeptical, and so the joke is that oh, it's so filthy here, it's just so dirty here, and so the song references things like the mattresses on the street. There's always a mattress on every street, and graffiti everywhere and so forth, and so we were joking one day as we walked along the canal, and I think she saw a brown swan and said, even the swans are dirty. And so it's like, so of course, out comes the notebook, and out comes a song. So it was fun to do that one and try to make it sound dirty, in its way. But yeah, that song is a really nice snapshot for me. It's a fun little memory. We were having a good time in Berlin, trying to capture something of that in the song. So
Another one I really liked was Back to the Egg. Just sort of like this lovely sort of evening-esque pop song.
yeah, and that was on the farm. It's funny because I started writing Even the Swans Are Dirty in Berlin, but I think the bulk of that actually took place here in this house on the farm. But Back to the Egg, there's a little house right next door, which they refer to as the little house or the honey house. When it's bee season, they do all the honey processing in there. I'm there, I'm helping out, cranking out the honey. But that's the Back to the Egg is the only song that I've actually written in that little house, and it was really nice. It was a summertime, and I just kind of brought my 12-string guitar over there, sat down, and just strummed out this little tune. And so I know it's probably some of this is probably lost on the listeners when I'm going on about this little house next door. But just picture, this sweet little place that hasn't kind of changed in decades. This little house next door. I just sat on this comfy little chair, and it's a little song, Back to the Egg. But again, it's the same theme as so many of the songs on the record. And it's kind of trying to bring things full circle.
So I was listening to a bunch of the other stuff on Bandcamp. I really dug the Moon Hat Live album, especially the piano-based songs on that.
God, yeah. You're one of, I think, 8 people who've heard the record now. That's a weird little record. Yeah, it was. It's a live record made, God, when was that? Like 2000 or something like that? I recorded the whole thing on a mini disc. And it's a live record that's meant to clearly not be a single performance. It's very cut and spliced together so that you get the one song ends and the applause from a completely different gig kicks in and so forth. So it's meant to be. It's still meant as a stoner headphone experience, like all these records that I make are. But yeah, I'm glad you like the piano stuff. I was doing a lot of little kind of quiet cafe gigs at the time. And so there was always a chance to kind of try out, some of the old songs that may have, because I mostly play guitar in concert. And so the chance to do piano, I've been doing more and more piano in recent years, coming back to it, because that's more, piano's where I started anyway, so.
And in the liner notes on the Bandcamp page, it says that live shows and albums have never seemed to have anything to do with each other. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I made an album with the Bevis Frond called King of Missouri, and that came out in 2001 or 2002, something like that. And that was a very straightforward record, kind of a 2 guitars, bass and drums thing. And we didn't have any time to make that record any weirder. I wish I had the budget to just do one more day in the studio, but I was in England for 2 weeks exactly. We had 5 days to do the recording, 5 days to do the mixing, and that was it. And then I flew home. And so my preference was to make a weirder record out of it, and I didn't have the time or the money. So I got back to California, and when that record came out, my band here at the time, they were thrilled because they had a record that they could do. They didn't have to say, the guitar player didn't have to ask, well, what do you want me to do about that synth part? Is that supposed to be for me? It was all laid out. Here's the guitar solo, here's the rhythm guitar, here's the bass track, here's and so it was a fun time for my band, because we were doing something that sounded like my records. But I just, I generally prefer making records. I like playing with stuff, playing with the sounds and playing with space time, and at certain gigs I can do that too. I think of, a lot of gigs. There's a place in Berlin called Madame Claude where I've played there since before I moved there, and they've got a piano down there. And it's one of those spaces where you feel you can take the show in a completely other direction. It's not just about music. It's a performance art thing, or it can be comedy, or just a surrealist freak show. And then you sit down and do a song, and everyone thinks, oh, he's a singer-songwriter. It's all kind of there at once. But there's no way for me to even take something like that and put it into an album, or at least I don't know how to do that. So no matter what kind of gig I'm doing, whether it's a very straightforward gig with a band and we're just rocking through my tunes, or I'm doing something weirdo with a piano and a, a boombox or who knows, it never feels the same as the records I'm making. And I always feel like the records are, I don't always get the records right, but they at least feel more like what I'm, what I like to do.
I was reading an old interview where you mentioned that your gigs in Cambridge have always been very special.
Oxford. I bet it was Oxford. I bet it was Oxford.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Well, that's funny because.
Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah. I mean, Oxford. Even though Cambridge, I lived in Cambridge for years. My time in Oxford has always been. I mean, I've lived in Oxford as well, but only months at a time here and there, and then sometimes weeks at a time. But Oxford has always been. That's a home base for me in England, and yeah, it's always been good. Oxford has always been good to me, and again, all kinds of gigs, whether it's straight rock band gigs or the weirdo gigs or any kind. But I've done so much there. I mean, like I said, I lived in Cambridge 5 years, and I didn't play there very much, a bit, but yeah, Oxford, there's just, it's a magical place. I've had so many moments in my life that have, just been thrilling or heartbreaking, but that city is it's got it going on.
And there's an Oxford variation of the title track, Man Bird.
Right. Which features Sharon Krause, who I knew when she was living. I met her when she came to. I met her in Sacramento when she was coming to Auburn, which is where I am now, to work with an artist called Christian Kiefer. But and she stayed at my dad's house for a few days while she needed a place, and so I ended up renting her room when she'd moved to Philadelphia. So I was living in Oxford at her place for a little while. So she's on there, wonderful artist. And Sue Jordan is on that track. And she was my singing partner in Oxford for a while. We did a couple records together. And John from the band Stornoway is playing cello on that track. And Stornoway are just, one of my favorite bands. What an incredibly talented, beautiful band. And so just, getting those folks on that track was important because, I wanted, even though the record is kind of focused on Berlin and Sacramento, kind of the back and forth, Oxford is just such a huge part of the story for me. And we finished the record in Oxford as well, in the sense that I booked a recording session and had kind of a gang of people show up to do some singing in these pre-pandemic days when you could do things like that. And so the record, the final session for the album took place in Oxford. And that was, symbolic as well as just, practical. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more question I wanted to ask you. You met Graham Chapman.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice. It's nice of you to ask. Because that was really cool. I think his show at the time, it was like a Cinemax or HBO, some sort of cable show on television called Dangerous Film Club. Is that right?
That sounds familiar.
I think that's what it was, the Dangerous Film Club. And it was, what was it? Sort of just odd old, maybe instructional film clips, safety in the workplace clips that I don't remember exactly. Was he doing sort of comedy voiceovers or something like that? A little bit like Mystery Science Theater type thing. Anyway, so he was touring to promote this television show, and he'd come to Sacramento, the little comedy club there, and it was fine, just the thrill to see a python, right? And then afterwards, because for me, like many people, I mean, George Harrison himself said something like he felt that the Pythons inherited the spirit of the Beatles when the Beatles split up, and so for me, the Python was probably as big an influence in my life as the Beatles. So yeah, there's the background of how thrilling this is for me. So he comes out to do the little meet and greet afterwards, and just answering questions. And I just said, so, what's your favorite Beatles album? and he was startled by this. It was so lovely. He just said, "Oh, what a lovely question. No one's ever asked me that." He says, "Well, I'd have to say Sgt. Pepper's." He says, "But of course, my favorite album of all time is Imagine by that's John Lennon." You know, it was a really lovely moment. You know,
Wow.
I mean, I like the fact that he was genuinely, you know, startled and touched by the question,
Yeah.
um, and but just the fact that his answer was just so rich for both of us. You know,
Yeah.
Sergeant Pepper, but Imagine was his favorite record of all time. What a, you know, it was just a moment, a real moment. And I mean, he died. I don't remember. It was a year or two later. So yeah, and I was at a Robin Hitchcock gig in San Francisco the day that Graham Chapman had died, and Robin didn't know this until the encore. So he came out to do the encore, and he was just stunned. You know,
Wow.
so that was, you know, so another moment. You know,
Yeah.
so
What's your favorite Beatles record?
Sergeant Pepper's
Yeah.
actually it is. It always is.
Yeah.
But I was listening to Meet the Beatles again recently, and kind of coming back to the American records, all the ones that we grew up on, that we had to sort of, you know, push aside when the CDs were released, and that we finally came to the proper British versions. And so coming back to Meet the Beatles and thinking, that's a damn great record, you know, in its own right. You know, it really is. And so I think that's second in line after Sergeant Pepper. So
Cool.
yeah.
So what's the future hold for you?
Well, I'm still not sure when I'm going back to Berlin. You know, my world of Berlin is unsettled right now, and as is the whole world with COVID. You know, um, because part of why I would be in Berlin is to be able to do my touring from there. Um, you know, I would have this year done um, France and Spain and the UK plus scattered Berlin gigs. That would have been with Berlin as my base. So I'm not always sure what I you know what my life is going to be in Berlin in the future. So that's kind of one of the question marks that's hanging right now. And you know, it is hard to answer, isn't it? Because of the
Yeah.
pandemic. You know, we're all just kind of everyone's kind of having to be really careful and stay where we can. But otherwise, you know, just more music. I mentioned the power pop record, and I've got another thing probably coming out next year. Actually, in a few days, there's an album called Bag of Kittens by Alice in Seconds that's being reissued, and that's a record that I wrote and produced. I did, you know, so I'm the songwriter on the record, but Allison's the singer, and I'm really happy that record's coming out again. It's just a really sweet record from 2009. It never had any promotion at the time, so it's coming out on the Bigster label now, and get a bit more attention. It's got Kimberly Rue from the Soft Boys playing on there, and a few other groovy people, and it's a cool record.
Oh,
So that's coming
nice.
out, and yeah. And then I just kind of otherwise keep cranking them out, and the power pop record should be interesting. You know, I'll keep you updated on that one. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Cool, man. It's been great talking to you. You got anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Uh, Probably not. This has
All
been
right.
lovely. It's been really nice. And then, you know, I don't, you know, I know I should probably look at my notes or be told what to plug, you know. Oh, don't forget me. So, I mean, sure. Please do buy my Manbird album. It's on Bandcamp. There you go.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah.